The Red Hand. Panthers, 426. Chapter 1, For Some a Nightmare, for Others a Paradise. Capital City, June 22nd, 2058, approximately 5 p.m. Free World Online, FWO. Standard Time. A young woman who looks no more than 20 years old can be seen sitting on the third-floor windowsill of what can only be described as a feudal manor. If the assault team hasn't hit any snags, they should be fighting Serval about now. Akagi. Her hair is long and dark green with black mixed in. It flows backwards, almost seeming to stand against gravity. Her eyes are the color of amber while her skin is slightly pale. Her clothing consists of what appears to be a black kimono, a white obi, and a hanten of the same color as her hair, the back of which bears a red handprint within a red circle. At the desk just beside her lies a very well-dressed man lying face down in a pool of blood. Well then, I suppose if this is to be my last day here, I might as well break out the good stuff. Akagi. The young woman's voice does not quite match her youthful appearance. It gives off an aura of maturity uncanny for someone who looks so young, and it sounds cold yet strangely comforting, like the gloaming of a warm autumn day. She reaches out into the air as a small black distortion appears. A few moments later, she pulls out a bottle of sake as well as a cup and some snacks. There it is, Ayakashi brand sake, all the way from the Emperor's own personal collection. I've been saving you for the perfect occasion, and I think being forced back to that unsatisfying life in Kyoto is a good enough reason to drink you. Akagi. Akagi begins to pour the golden liquid into her small cup. Hell yes. Just the smell alone is telling me this is going to be the best tasting drink I've ever had. She brings the cup to her lips and takes a small sip. A few moments pass before she proceeds to down the entire cup in one shot. Holy hell. The Emperor's private stock doesn't disappoint. Man, after having tasted this, anything IRL is just gonna taste like water. Ugh, just another reason I want to stay here. Akagi. An hour passed with Akagi merrily consuming the sake and the snacks she brought out. Things were relatively quiet, with only a gentle breeze and the sound of the bustling city below. At one point, a maid did attempt to enter the room only to catch sight of Akagi and her dead master before quietly retreating. This piece was interrupted when a small notification appeared in Akagi's vision. Ping. Akagi took a few moments to read the message. Looks like they got the boss down to its final health bar. Seems that all those previous attempts finally paid dividends. With their new strats and the healing items and abilities they have, there is no way the boss can defeat them. It's basically default killing at this point. Akagi. This attempt would be the 6th by the assault team to defeat the final world boss Serval. The previous 5 attempts had cost the lives of some of the best and brightest of the assault team, but where each of those failures took away members, they also gave valuable intel on how to defeat the boss. Glad I chose to bust out the sake. It looks like we will be going home this time. 3 years, 8 months, and 12 days, that's the exact amount of time I got to experience my true calling in life. She takes a sip. And now I have to return to a world and people who would never accept it, not to mention losing all these powers. Akagi. I'm sure right now most everyone else is cheering, ready to go home, see their families again, and put this death game behind us. Akagi lets out a small chuckle. I guess I can relate a little bit. Even I will admit I miss Kana. She should be a junior in high school this year. I wonder if she went to Tokyo like she was planning. She shakes her head. I can imagine if any of these idiots here knew the Red Hand had a little sister she cared about, they would find that funny. That idiot Hishya would probably ramble about fucking Gapmo or something stupid. Akagi. Oh, well, if they find an assassin having someone they care about funny, then so be it. I might enjoy the job, but that doesn't mean I have to act like some brooding edgelord. She lets out a small sigh and pours another cup. A toast to the death of the Red Hand Akagi and the rebirth of the boring girl. A look of bewilderment comes over Akagi's face. I don't remember my name. Why don't I remember it? We've only been in the game for just under 4 years. Did I really disassociate myself so much that I forgot my own name? I guess that goes to show just how much I've enjoyed being in this world. She stops herself. How much I've enjoyed being Akagi so much. Akagi. Akagi, the Red Hand, FWO's finest assassin. She says while dramatically waving her arms. These last 3 years have shown me so much about myself, more than I could have ever hoped for. She says, staring out into the city. Find your calling, pursue your passion, and do something you love. She lets out a laugh. Those were the words that my stupid guidance counselor said to me during my consultation at the start of senior year. Akagi cracks a wry smile. I wonder what she would say if I told her what I found out my passion is. She takes another sip of the sake. Not hard to imagine it, she would probably cry out in horror. Tell me how horrible it is and that such a way of life isn't something that good and normal people even think about. She lets her head hang for a moment. Now that I think about it, I wonder if I'll go to jail when I get back. She continued with a bored voice. It's not like I kept my identity a secret or anything, and I'm sure the police back home will be able to put 2 and 2 together. Probably going to be a lot of angry people. A lot of parents will surely be pissed. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Kishizama wanted revenge for the death of Shizami, even if that bastard had it coming. Akagi. Oh well, no sense in worrying about it now. What's done is done, and I don't regret any of it. She takes another sip. I don't think this is exactly what Hishya meant when she told me to live my life with no regrets, but hey, details. Akagi. Akagi pours another cup. The hero of FWO, the victor of Husan, the Flame Empress. That girl racked up a good number of titles over these last few years. I bet she will be heralded as a hero back home. Lord knows the people here already idolize her. I can already imagine the articles. How Hishya, the hero of FWO, defeated the world bosses. FWO's hero who kept everyone together during the Midnight Hawk siege. The hero who stood up to the Red Hand. She lets out a slight chuckle. I wonder how everyone would feel knowing that even their so-called hero needed my services. Agaki. Akagi then sat quietly on the windowsill, staring out into the city, watching its residents go about their day until around 30 minutes later she hears the familiar voice of the game system. Ding. Congratulations, players. The world boss Serval has been defeated. With his defeat, all 10 world bosses in Free World Online have been defeated. Calculating statistics. The defeat of the world boss Serval resulted in the death of 8 players. This brings the total number of players currently within FWO to 1,047 out of the original 3,000. Number of players killed by monsters, 1,542. Number of players killed by players, 219. Number of player suicides, 126. Number of players killed by premature removal of VR gear, 21. Number of players killed by external health issues, 15. Number of players killed by glitches, 10. Number of players killed by drowning, 10. Number of players killed by non-monster wildlife, 5. Number of players killed by chickens, 3. Number of players killed by NPCs, 2. Number of players who became limit breakers, 1. Player with the highest number of player kills, Akagi, 104. Player with the highest number of monster kills, Hishya, 20,458. Player with the highest number of NPC kills, Pro Gamer, 3,954. Player with the highest number of crafted items, Destructive Imp, 24,374. Player with the highest personal bounty, Akagi, 126,453,523 gold coins. Player with the... And the list went on for some time. With a total of 1,047 out of 3,000 players remaining this rounds to a 35% survival rate and enables 100 players to receive the final reward. Congratulations to those who have survived my game, and congratulations to those award winners. As promised, all surviving players will be logged out. Thank you for playing Free World Online, and I look forward to seeing your futures. Wait, rewards? What rewards? What the hell is the point of rewards when we are about to be logged out anyway? And why the hell has the system started talking in first person? Akagi was very confused. A few moments later, a notification appeared in her vision. Dear Akagi, congratulations on not only surviving Free World Online, but becoming the only person to achieve the status of Limit Breaker. Your assassinations put the entire world on edge, and you were feared and respected for your power and ability by both players and NPCs alike. As such, you have been selected as one of the 100 players to receive my special reward. Please continue to foster your natural talents and show the world just how terrifying the Red Hand truly is. Additionally, for achieving the status of Limit Breaker, an additional reward has been deposited in your inventory. Enjoy, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Sincerely, your friend Mizumi. Akagi was visibly confused. Extra reward? Limit Breaker? Continue to foster my talents? What the hell is the system talking about? And who the hell is Mizumi? Her heart began to beat faster as she considered all of the possible meanings behind the message. However, before she was able to make any headway, she was suddenly greeted with another notification. Ping. Beginning logout. See you later. Suddenly, a bright flash of light blinded Akagi. She felt weightless, and for a brief moment, she thought that the system had lied to her and killed her instead. However, after what felt like hours, she soon found herself staring at a small, clear plastic visor, which contained a menu for the VR helmet. This sudden change made her stomach retch and caused her to choke on her own saliva. After she gained control of her breathing, she could hear someone shouting nearby. Doctor! She's awake! The patient's awake! After a few moments, it became clear to Akagi that she was in a hospital and was likely moved here not long after being trapped in FWO so that she wouldn't die while in her comatose state. Everything felt strange. The roughness of the bed sheets, the cold air on her skin, along with so many other sensations, it was enough to overwhelm her. FWO was an extremely advanced game boasting the most advanced AI in VR history. However, Akagi and the others had only been given access to the alpha build. As such, less important senses such as touch were underdeveloped and could only give rough approximations of the intended sensations. Suddenly being able to feel everything perfectly was all the confirmation that Akagi needed to prove that she had indeed been logged out. Numerous different voices could be heard, most likely from the hospital staff who seemed to be a panic. They didn't expect her to actually wake up and were taken aback by her sudden return. After a few minutes, Akagi attempted to move her arms to remove the VR helmet, but found that while she could move her arms somewhat, she simply did not have the strength to lift the helmet. Makes sense not moving for 4 years would definitely atrophy my muscles. Akagi. You shouldn't be moving around, miss. You're in no state to do anything right now. It's far too dangerous. A moment later, a woman wearing nursing scrubs came into view. Here, let me get that helmet off you. I can imagine you're disorientated and would like to get that thing off your head. Nurse. The nurse carefully lifted her head and removed the helmet. There we go. I can imagine that feels much better. The nurse stopped mid-sentence as she went wide-eye as she looked at Akagi. It took a few moments for her to regain her composure and continue speaking. Dr. Amherst, I think you need to come in here right now. Nurse. Chapter 2. A face that others could never forget. I don't think a freaked-out nurse is a good sign. Akagi. My apologies. You're probably a little confused after waking up. My name is David Amherst, and you are currently in Kyoto Central Hospital. You were moved here with your parents' permission not long after it was made public that Free World Online's alpha testers could not leave the game. He says with a frown. The United Nations created a task force which brought together doctors who specialize in comatose patients, as well as those with experience treating patients in or with VR, like myself. His expression darkens. As you no doubt know, we were unable to do anything to help you beyond simply keeping your physical bodies alive. There were a few attempts to remove the headgear from players, but... Amherst. If I recall correctly, there were a few cases of players dying suddenly for no discernible reason. Makes sense. We always figured people on the outside removing it would kill us, but we had no way to 100% confirm that. Poor bastards. Akagi. Are you able to speak at all? I wouldn't be surprised you found it difficult with the significant muscle atrophy. Amherst. Akagi took in a deep breath. Yes, I can. It's a little difficult, but I should be able to speak, she said in a weak voice. Good. That makes things much easier. Can you tell me if all of the players were able to log out, or are you the only one? Amherst. Akagi slowly explained to Dr. Amherst how the assault team had defeated the final world boss, and the system stated that it would log everyone out as promised. At first, the doctor's face was quite happy, but it slowly turned to sadness. Not even a minute later, the nurse returned with what looked like a file folder. Here you are, doctor. Nurse. Thank you, Kirika. Can you do me a favor and contact both her family as well as Chief Nakagumo and schedule a meeting with Dr. Ishihara ASAP? Amherst. Naturally, Akagi agreed. After all, she was also concerned about the state of her body after effectively being in a coma for 4 years. The doctor had not lied when he said the checks would be basic, and after a few minutes he was finished. Everything seems normal. Well as normal for someone this atrophied can be, but nothing dangerous. Now then, we move on to what is likely to be the most uncomfortable part about this. Ms. Rishia, from what I can see, your appearance has changed. Your eyes are now the color of amber, and your hair has a great deal of green mixed into it. You also appear to have grown slightly, and your skin has paled to a noticeable degree. Although that may be a side effect from being in a coma-like state. From what your information tells me, this is a little different than your normal black hair and brown eyes. Amherst. After thinking for a minute, Akagi asked, "Do you have a mirror?" What greeted her was a face she was all too familiar with. A face she could never forget, and a face she had come to love. After inspecting it for a few moments, Akagi began to laugh quite hard, loud enough to startle Dr. Amherst. Taken aback by this sudden outburst, he became concerned that her new appearance had caused mental distress, but she quickly assured him that nothing was wrong. This face, Akagi stated with a surprising amount of vigor. This face is mine. Or at least it's the face that I created within FWO. There is no way I could mistake it. This face, this hair, these eyes, all of it is mine, and it greeted me every day for the last 4 years whenever I saw my reflection. Akagi said with a small smile. I wonder if this is the reward promised by the system? If it is, I'm not exactly going to complain. Akagi. It was obvious to Dr. Amherst that Akagi was elated with this discovery, and he was not exactly sure how to react. On the one hand, he wanted to be happy for her that she had received something positive from this ordeal. But on the other hand, there was no telling what sort of effects this change might have on her body. Akagi was equally in the dark about the transformation. She thought that it might have something to do with the reward she was promised by the system, but decided to keep quiet about that as she had nothing but speculation to go off of. Dr. Amherst then spent the next 45 minutes going over a series of questions with Akagi. The questions mostly focused on her memory and cognitive functions, as well as on anything which might be helpful for the medical team. Rishia Tamagawa, so that was my original name. Hearing it, I understand why I chose to forget it. Honestly, it feels strange to be called that. Almost wrong, I guess, is the word for it. The name Akagi definitely suits me much better. She smiled internally. Strange. Why do I get this feeling that a familiar presence is approaching this room? Actually, no, it's not 1, but 3. Am I going nuts? Because this is the same feeling I got with my detect presence skill in FWO? Akagi. Akagi chose to brush this off for the moment, chalking it up to the side effects of being immersed in full dive for far longer than was healthy. All right. Your family will likely be arriving soon, so I will take my leave so that you may spend time with them when you arrive. I will inform the nurses that rules regarding visiting hours do not apply to you since I can imagine you have much to discuss with your family. He said with a smile. Don't push yourself too hard. You need to focus on resting and recovering. It will be a long road, but you will pull through. Amherst. Bang! Just then, the door to the room flew open, and a young girl with a black ponytail and wearing a school uniform barged into the room. Akagi instantly knew who this was. Wani-chan. Kana. Chapter 3. Reunion and reality. Ms. Kana, I know you are happy to see your sister again, and I can sympathize with you, but I would ask that you keep the volume to a reasonable level. Amherst chuckled. Ah. Sorry, Mr. Amherst. Kana's face goes slightly red from embarrassment. Dr. Amherst returned a smile. I just finished up my examination of your sister. She is cognizant and vocal, but I would ask that you don't push her too much. Where are your parents? I should speak with them. Amherst. They should be on their way up. I might have broken out into a sprint when I got out of the car. Kana says while scratching her face. Oni-chan, are you really back? She asked. Is it finally over? Akagi let out a small laugh. Yeah, kiddo, I'm back. Your gaming genius keeps her undefeated record just a little longer. Not even a literal death game was enough to beat me. Akagi says with a bright smile. At this point, the proverbial dam broke and Kana began to cry. She came up to Akagi and placed her hands on top of hers. I thought I would never see you again, she says through her tears. Every day I was so scared. Scared that we would get the message that you were dead. I watched the number of living players drop from 3,000 to 2,000 to nearly 1,000. Her tears got worse. Each time I saw that a player other than you had died, I was glad. All that mattered was that you were still alive and that someone else had died instead of you. At this point, she was crying so hard she couldn't even speak. Akagi placed a hand on her head. It's all right. It's all right. I'm here now, Kana. It's over. Kana continued to cry for a few minutes before she calmed down enough to speak. Kana, there is nothing wrong with being happy that the person you cared about was alive. Some might find that cold or cruel, but it's human nature to want your loved ones to live. During these last 4 years, I've seen people do horrible things to others, just to ensure that those they cared about survived. Akagi. Was it really okay for me to think that way? Doesn't that make me a terrible person? Kana. It was clear to Akagi that this had been eating away at Kana. No, Kana, it just makes you human. Nothing more and nothing less. Akagi replied with a smile. I can imagine Hishya would retort by asking if I was even human at this point. And she wouldn't exactly be wrong. Not that she is either. Akagi. Yes, Kana, I do. Akagi responded instantly. And before you ask, my appearance seems to have changed to match my avatar in FWO. I have no idea how this happened, but I don't care. After all, this means that Akagi lives on. Akagi's glee from being able to keep her appearance was visible on her face. Akagi? Who is that? Kana asked. I am Akagi. She answered with a slightly deeper and louder voice. Akagi is me, and I am Akagi. The person I always was. The person I was always meant to be. That's who Akagi is. It was obvious that Kana had no idea what she was talking about, and confusion and concern were plastered all over her face. And what are you good at? Oni-chan. Kana asked with concern. Assassination. Akagi replied with a grin that sent chills up her sister's spine. As Kana considered the implications of what she had just been told by her sister, time seemed to stop. Kana had known for many years that her sister didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. While Kana's grades were excellent, she was even heralded as a genius. Her sisters were mediocre to the point where some people questioned how they could be related. Kana never cared about this gap and was always just happy to have her sister. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for their parents who treated Akagi poorly. Their parents would constantly berate Akagi for how much worse she was than her younger sister, and they made it obvious that they were embarrassed by her. It got to the point where they stopped referring to Akagi as their daughter unless they absolutely had to. As the years went by, Kana noticed more and more that Akagi had withdrawn from society as she spent more and more time on gaming. Eventually, it had gotten to the point that Akagi only left the house to go to school or to spend time with Kana. All this time, Kana could only ask herself why her sister didn't hate her, why she didn't resent her. After all, Kana believed that without her, their parents would never have acted so cruelly toward her sister. Now, all these years later, her sister has finally told her what had made her happy. The joy in Kana's heart from being reunited with her sister was brought to a screeching halt. The journey Kana sent her sister on led Akagi to believe that being an assassin was her calling. Was this really the path she was meant to follow? Or was it something that occurred because of Kana? The thought that she had essentially doomed her sister was too much to bear for the girl. Akagi became concerned when Kana froze up. Kana, hey, Kana, are you all right? Akagi, Is it my fault? Did I do this to you? Kana asked while holding back tears. I told you to find your happiness in gaming, and now... Kana began to cry and shake vigorously. As someone who had gone through a mental breakdown once, Akagi knew exactly what was going on. Kana, listen to me, it's not your fault. Akagi. However, no matter how many times she called out to her sister, it was clear that none of her words were getting through. Akagi tried to sit up, but found that she had no strength. Damn it, this fucking body is useless. What I wouldn't do to have my body strengthening right now. Akagi. Akagi's confusion was quickly replaced with action as she grabbed Kana and pulled her into an embrace. A few moments pass as Kana stares into her sister's amber eyes. No, Kana replied weakly. The two siblings held each other in a tight embrace for several minutes without saying anything. Uh-huh, Kana says with her face buried in Akagi's chest. Good. Now you should probably get off me. I doubt straining my body is a smart idea right now. Akagi. I couldn't just let my sister stand there crying right in front of me now, could I? Besides, I saw what was going on. You were on the verge of going through what I did all those years ago. I sure as hell don't want you to go through that. Akagi. Let's not mention how I just used my physical strengthening ability from FWO. That might make things even more confusing. Why can I use that in the real world? Can I use any other abilities? Questions for later. Akagi. Thanks, Oni-chan. I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything you've been through both in FWO and at home. Your career choice was definitely not what I expected when I told you to find your happiness in gaming. I always thought you would be a pro gamer or a content creator, not an assassin. While I don't completely understand, I can say that no matter what, you will always be my sister. And I will always love you no matter what. Besides, if I left you alone, who knows what kind of trouble you would get into. Kinda. So Oni-chan is an assassin? I guess I'll have my work cut out for me if I'm going to support her. I don't know if I can agree with such a lifestyle, but I'll do my best to help her. Kana. Yes, for while many jokingly called Kana obsessed with her older sister, few would ever understand just how far she was willing to go for her. Chapter 4. A Schism, a Mask, and the Future. It wasn't much later that Akagi and Kana's parents entered the room. Their stay was brief, and it seemed that nothing had changed in the 4 years Akagi had been gone. The two of them were more worried about Kana and complained that Akagi's condition could have caused Kana's grades to drop. They berated Akagi for her gaming habit causing problems for the family, and told her that she had better figure out her life quickly as they wouldn't be helping her now that she was nearly 21. Naturally, Kana was furious. For the first time in her life, Akagi watched as Kana yelled at her parents. Kana had never been one for arguing and would rarely get mad, let alone scream at someone. Their parents were taken aback by this sudden outburst and, at first, blamed Akagi's influence, but this only set Kana off even more. It seemed that all the stress and resentment towards her parents had finally come to a head, and Kana was finally saying what had been on her mind for nearly a decade. Once Kana was finished, she requested their parents to leave and told them that she would have a friend drive her home. Akagi watched this entire thing with ostensible shock, but deep down, she had known this was coming for years. She knew that Kana adored her and that she hated how her parents treated her. For years, she had always talked Kana down from confronting them by telling her that she would one day leave and that the issue would solve itself. Of course, getting trapped in FWO for nearly 4 years had thrown a slight wrench into those plans. Despite everything, Akagi wanted Kana to have a normal relationship with their parents. Whether their love of Kana was because they saw her as a meal ticket is up to speculation. But from the outside, they were supportive and loving to her. And Akagi wanted it to stay that way. Of course, there were plenty of times when Akagi wanted to put a wedge between Kana and their parents, but she always held off on doing so out of love for her sister. After their parents left, the two sisters continued their conversation. Kana asked Akagi to tell her about what happened in FWO over those last 4 years, and Akagi obliged. She kept nothing from Kana telling her how she had spent her time there as an assassin, taking contracts from players and NPCs alike. Contrary to Akagi's expectations, Kana took it all in stride, becoming interested in the details of Akagi's work. I'm not sure whether I should be happy or concerned that Kana has taken such an interest in my line of work. Perhaps she is more fascinated by the absurdity than anything else? Akagi. Eventually, Kana asked about a specific player. Akagi thought for a second. Kana looked at her, confused. Kindred spirits? Both of us had no idea what we wanted to do in life. We spent all our spare time playing games because they gave us something we needed. Akagi remarked. I played games to get away from reality, to split myself off from the world around me. This led to me taking actions in games that would be considered far from acceptable in the real world. Essentially, I played the bad guy, and I loved every second of it. I understand now that this wasn't just some wanton escapism, but rather my real personality, which I had been suppressing. Akagi chuckled. Hishya, like me, used gaming to let her real self out. In-game, Hishya would always ensure she was the center of attention. Not in an annoying way, mind you, she was smart. She would always find the niche would be in the center of any action, would naturally work her way into leadership roles, and generally made herself indisposable. She did this by combining her skill and charisma into a terrifyingly effective combination. This ensured that when it came down to it, everyone would be glad she was around. Akagi continued. And why does she do this, you might ask? It's simple. She is vain as hell. She loves watching people fawn over her and praise her. At this point, I'm convinced she gets off to it. She ruthlessly takes down anyone else who might outshine her and ensures that she reigns supreme. She did this in FWO to great effect, and I'm sure in the coming weeks, you will hear all kinds of stories about Hishya the hero and her many feats of bravery. Naturally, every one of those was a deliberate act to increase her reputation. I can't be mad at the girl. Hell, I might even be inclined to praise her myself since it takes commitment to pull this off. Akagi took a deep breath. Listen, Kana, FWO was just as much of a gift to her as much as it was for me. Now that she has all this fame and adoration from there, who knows what she will do next? I wouldn't consider her a bad person, but Akagi warned. A little while later, 2 police detectives arrived and began collecting information from Akagi. They wanted to know what had occurred in FWO and if she could help them to pinpoint the person responsible for this event. Of course, Akagi was just as in the dark as they were and couldn't tell them much about the mastermind. However, she was able to confirm that the system voice used in the game matched the voice of the one who informed law enforcement that the players were trapped 4 years prior. Of course, Akagi had no choice but to disclose to the detectives what she had been doing during her time in FWO. She informed them that she had been an assassin who had killed many players during these 4 years. However, to both her and Kana's surprise, she was told that she was off the hook for those deaths. They explained using some very complex legal explanation that she couldn't be held responsible. The only thing she managed to even remotely understand was that part of the reasoning stemmed from an inability to understand how the players had actually died. From what she was told, they never detected any interaction between the headgear and the players' bodies, and thus the cause of death couldn't be determined. Kana seemed to have no trouble following the complex explanation, which Akagi found cute. But then again, something like this was nothing out of the ordinary for her sister. The detectives did say that just because she couldn't be held legally responsible for those deaths, that didn't mean the court of public opinion was safe. They told her that, most likely, this information would be made public, and that there was little they could do to protect her from societal backlash. Of course, Akagi didn't really care what other people thought of her. Kana seemed to have accepted her for who she was, and that was all that mattered. The detectives stayed for almost 2 hours, asking a seemingly never-ending barrage of questions. Akagi had been close to asking them to leave when they declared they were finished and would return if they had any further queries. After that, Akagi sent Kana home, something the girl vehemently opposed. After some convincing and reminding her that she could simply come back tomorrow, Kana called her friend from school and got a ride home. It was now well after dark. Akagi was alone in her room and the hospital was eerily quiet. Now then, with today's game of 2,000 fucking questions done, it's time to see what the hell is going on with my body. First of all, let's confirm that I can actually use body strengthening and that earlier wasn't a fluke. Akagi. Akagi took a moment to remember the sensation from earlier and cross it with how she understood body strengthening in the game. What resulted was an all-too-familiar sensation spreading throughout her body and into each and every muscle. Well, that confirms that I can use body-strengthening magic in the real world. In fact, I can sense my magic pool as I did in the game, only this time it's more of a feeling rather than a status bar. She brought her hand up and snapped her fingers, causing a small amount of fire to appear above her them. I can use my fire magic too. How is this even possible? It was just a game, a simulation made of electricity and code. Things carrying over IRL shouldn't be possible. Suddenly, a small black distortion appeared, causing Akagi to become excited as she reached inside. After a few moments, she withdrew her hand, bringing with her a sheathed wakizashi. After a few moments, she slowly unsheathed the blade and pointed it toward the ceiling. Chapter 5. School Smarts and Connected Friends. All right, class. It's time for lunch. Make sure you don't forget to do your reading assignment and the corresponding homework for Chapter 2. Female teacher. Thank goodness. Student 1. The students proceed to break for lunch, with some heading to the cafeteria while others sat at their friends' desks to chat and eat together. However, one blue-haired girl decided to run straight to Kana's desk before jumping and landing face first on top of it. Help me, Kana. This math homework is killing me. I don't understand it at all. Mika. These are Kana's closest friends, Mika Yuminaka and Naomi Tokugawa, respectively. They had gotten to know each other during their freshman year at Kyoto High School and became fast friends. As you can imagine, this wasn't the first time that Mika had come to Kana for help. You might be right, but it's more fun to do this, Mika replied with a bright smile. I guess you're right. Hitting your head a few more times won't hurt you. It might even help you out. Naomi replies with a laugh. How could you say something so mean, Naomi? Must be that Tokugawa blood in you that sucks out all the fun. Mika replied sharply. The two girls locked their eyes in a staring contest for several seconds until... Pfft, Naomi. The two girls began to laugh quite hard. Such banter had become common between them over the last 2 years and was actually part of the reason they became such good friends. The two of you really are idiots, aren't you? Kana says with a cheeky smile. At this point, you should just become a comedy duo with how well you have the act down at this point. Sounds great. When do we start, Naomi? Mika. I'll pass. I have a feeling that my ancestors would spin in their graves if I tried that. Naomi said with a smile. Ah, yes. I'm sure Ieyasu would be angry if one of his descendants was making people laugh rather than boring them to death. Mika. Indeed, Naomi was a proper descendant of the Tokugawa Ieyasu. Although her family doesn't have much in the way of direct influence, it's still quite prestigious, and she is treated as minor celebrity. Why this daughter of the Tokugawa clan was attending a school in Kyoto, no one knows. To answer your question, Mika, I don't mind helping you, but need I remind you of your last tutoring session with me? Kana said with an almost sadistic grin. Seeing the look on Kana's face, Mika shuddered, remembering the almost Spartan teaching method she used. Naomi helped me instead. I forgot Kana stands far beyond us mere mortals, Mika cried. You do remember that I'm terrible at math too? Right? Naomi replied with an embarrassed look on her face. No, I don't want to go back to the Spartan training again. Wah! Mika began to flail around in a panic. With no other choice, the two agreed. I feel like I just sold my soul to a demon. Mika. At least the demon in question is someone as cute as Kana. Naomi. Oh yeah, didn't you say that your sister was getting out of the hospital today? It's only been a month. Has that been enough recovery time? Naomi asked with concern. She recovered much faster than anyone expected, regaining almost 100% of her muscle mass and mobility. You should have seen the look on Dr. Amherst's face when he saw her walking around last week. Kana. Akagi's recovery had been almost miraculous. Under normal circumstances, it should have taken months for her body to recover from nearly 4 years of non-use. Behind closed doors, the doctor suspected that her rapid recovery had something to do with her changed body, but they couldn't be sure. Kana also suspected that her sister had been hiding something from her, but chose not to ask for now. Well, that's great news. I'm glad your sister was able to recover. Naomi froze mid-sentence. I'm so sorry, Mika. That was insensitive to say things like that in front of you. Naomi said apologetically. Huh? I told you it's fine. Sure, I wish my brother had managed to survive FWO, but that doesn't mean that Kana can't be happy her sister survived. I would never take that away from her. Mika replied with a small smile. I don't mind, but let me ask my sister. I doubt she will care if you would come. Naomi, do you want to come too? I'm going right after class today. Kana. If that's not an inconvenience to you, that would be great. Kana. Naomi gave a bright smile. That girl, if what I've heard is even half true, she could be the most dangerous of all the returnees. She could also be just the answer I've been searching for. Naomi. Akagi, I sincerely hope you're the kind of person my sources and your sisters say you are. Naomi silently prayed in her mind. The girls then spent their lunch together. Music and anime were the primary topics with a few others sprinkled in. The rest of the school day came and went with little fanfare, the only notable event being Mika getting yelled at for falling asleep during literature class. All right, class, don't forget your homework for next week and I will see you all on Monday. And Ms. Yumanaka, each time you fall asleep in my class, the book I use will get heavier. Male teacher. The 3 girls packed up their belongings and headed for the main entrance. Why is Mr. Takahashi so mean to me? I'm his niece and he still hits me with those heavy textbooks. Mika. He does it because you're his niece. Weren't your mom's words, and I quote, "Feel free to hit her as hard as you like, her head is dense enough to handle it." If you want him to stop, then maybe you should, I don't know, not sleep in his class. Naomi. But the classroom is so warm and the books are so boring, Mika said while giving puppy eyes. Naomi just shook her head. My driver should be in front of the school so we can leave immediately. Naomi. Still crazy that you can drive? I'm too scared to get behind the wheel. Mika. I was nervous at first, but it's not too bad. I'm just thankful that traffic isn't as bad here as it is in Osaka or Tokyo. Kana. Outside the main gate is a small black car and an older man dressed like a butler standing in front of the passenger door. Hello, my lady, Ms. Yumanaka, Ms. Tomogawa. How was your day today? Driver. Hello, Mr. Nishizami. Did you get older? I see a few more gray hairs. Mika asked with a mischievous grin. If I do have more, they are likely from the extra stress I receive from you. The older man said with a smile. I swear, Mika has a superpower that just allows her to do those kinds of acts with anyone. Naomi. Yeah, that level of charisma is almost cheating. Kana. The 3 girls got into the car and headed to Kyoto Central Hospital, which was quite close. The driver parked in the adjacent lot and told Naomi to contact him when they were out front so that they could limit the distance Akagi needed to walk. It only took a few minutes for the 3 of them to clear security and head up to Akagi's room. I don't think I've ever been in here before. Mika. Really? I would have thought your brother would have been brought here like Kana's sister was. Naomi. Mika's expression darkened slightly. My brother was in Osaka for university and was placed in a hospital there. Mika replied. That makes sense. Less risk that way. Naomi. It was well known at this point that transporting those trapped in FWO was extremely risky. A few had even died when family or medical staff had attempted to remove the headgear. The only reason more people didn't die was that whoever trapped the players gave a short window where they could move people to hospitals. Of course, this was little consolation to the families of those who were trapped. This gave off the impression that whoever did this saw the whole ordeal as a game entertainment. Oni-chan, we're here to pick you up. Are you ready to go? Kana's words slowed to a crawl. The sight that greeted the three girls was truly fantastical. Akagi was sitting on the windowsill in her traditional outfit, one she had worn so many times in FWO. She was staring out into the busy Kyoto cityscape while smoking a kiseru. Her hair was blown back by the gentle breeze coming through the window. To the girls, she looked elegant, like something out of one of the traditional folk tales they had heard so many times as children. Kana couldn't believe what she saw. Naomi was floored by the quality of the clothing Akagi was wearing, while Mika had sparkles in her eyes. The three girls were stunned into a silence that was only broken when Akagi said, "What's the matter, girls? Do I look that strange?" she asked with a smile. Chapter 6, A Yokai in Modern Kyoto. Growing up, Naomi's grandfather used to tell her fascinating tales and stories about their clan's history. He told her tales of battle, conquest, love, passion, and glory. The nights when her grandfather told her these stories while she lay in bed are some of her favorite and most important memories. Among these stories, one always stood out to her. It was one her grandfather had told her many times. Since ancient times, stories of yokai and other monsters existing in Japan had been a staple of the storytelling and culture of the islands. Some stories told of horrifying monsters which killed people and tormented them. Others told of yokai who protected people and provided prosperity to their lands. Today, these stories are seen as nothing but fairy tales and fictional accounts used to explain natural phenomena or unusual events. After all, with modern technology, if yokai did exist, why had no one seen them in over 250 years? Why had stories of yokai existing alongside humans vanished after the Meiji Restoration? When asked where that place was, her grandfather could only answer that no one knew. He told his granddaughter that they didn't even know if this exchange happened as they only had an oral legend that was passed down. However, he told her this, that if she ever came across a yokai, she should treat them with the utmost respect. The moment she saw Akagi's form sitting on the windowsill, she recalled her grandfather's stories. You're a yokai," Naomi said with not a shred of doubt. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about them, and I never really believed them, but standing here right now." She gulped. "I just know. I don't know how, but I just do." "That's so fucking cool. Why didn't you ever tell us, Kana?" Mika. It was clear that Naomi's sudden declaration had caused quite a bit of confusion. "Ha ha 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 ha." Akagi burst out laughing. "No, Kana, you're not a yokai, and neither are our parents. Shut the door behind you and take a seat. I guess I have some questions to answer." "First things first. Yes, I am a yokai." Akagi answered with a wry smile. "I knew it." Naomi. Squee. Mika. "Eep, it's the scary Kana. Where is the salt when you need it?" Mika remarked. "I don't think salt will be enough. We probably need an onmyoji to keep scary Kana under control," Naomi quipped. Kana responded by giving the two of them the look which caused them to straighten in compliance. "Kana, you make me so proud." Akagi. "So I know Kana is aware, but have the two of you heard that some of those who survived FWO had their appearance changed to match their avatars?" Akagi asked. "I heard rumors about it, but I never imagined they were true." Mika. "I was aware of this. My family's network allowed me to access some of the records of those who had awoken from the game." Naomi. You can do that?" Mika. "I don't really like to talk about it, but yes," Naomi replied with a conflicted expression. "Should you be telling us that?" Kana. "If your sister is going to be honest with us, it's only proper that I return that favor." Naomi. "Interesting. When Kana told me you were from the Tokugawa family, I figured you might have access to more information than the average person." Akagi mused. I can confirm that those rumors and the information you gathered were accurate. My appearance now is that of my avatar in FWO. The two girls looked at Kana, who nodded, saying, Wow, she does look different. Like a lot different. Mika remarked. That's a dramatic change. How is that even possible? Naomi. As for how, I've got my running theories, but I'll hold off on those for now. Akagi replied. However, what's important is that it wasn't just my appearance that changed, but rather my race changed with it. Akagi. Akagi continued. In FWO, everyone started as a human. It was the default race for every new player. The game system for skills and abilities was intended to be dynamic and would allow players to be as creative, unique as possible. If you look at the marketing, this was something they were pushing big time. Akagi stated while twirling her kiseru. This customization went beyond skills and also included one's race. By performing certain actions or taking certain skills, you could unlock a race that was specialized for your needs. For example, someone who wanted to do crafting could nudge the system towards allowing them to be a dwarf or gnome. This race would give bonuses to these skills and would likely give a better gameplay experience if that was what you wanted to do. Akagi continued. Of course, you were free to ignore these race options if you wanted to. They were only a guideline. This customization went beyond a surface-level amount of selectable standard races like elves, dwarves, and the like. Because the system was an extremely adaptable and flexible AI, you could effectively create any race you wanted within reason if you knew how it worked. Akagi smiled. This led a few of the more dedicated players like myself to exploit the system until it gave us the perfect race for our build. Akagi continued. In my case, I was an assassin, something which fell under the category of a rogue. I wanted more options for stealth, subterfuge, and the like. The standard races didn't fit what I had in mind, so I spent a great deal of time and effort creating a custom race. Akagi. It took many attempts, and I'm pretty sure I pushed the system to the absolute limit of what it would allow. But in the end, I got what I was looking for. Akagi said with a grin. So the race you created was a yokai? Kana asked. While I am technically a yokai, I am specifically a nurarihyon, a type of yokai which thrives on illusion, trickery, and darkness. Akagi. Isn't that the ugly old man with the big head? Mika. That is one depiction of them, but the system was kind enough to work with me on this and allowed me a form more commonly seen in certain fiction I had read. Akagi. And there you have it. I can't tell you why this happened, but at the very least you know that I am indeed a yokai now. Akagi stated while smiling at the girls. I'm sorry for not saying anything sooner, Kana. I had planned on explaining all of this when we got home. Akagi apologized. It's okay, I promised myself that I wouldn't push you to reveal anything until you were ready. Kana smiled. Akagi looked over at Naomi, who seemed to be struggling with a question in her head. If you have something on your mind, go ahead and ask, I don't mind. Akagi. Naomi took a deep breath. This has been a lot to take in. That a game could change someone so dramatically should be impossible. Akagi gave a small chuckle at that. Let me ask you this. She continued nervously. Were your race and appearance the only things that got carried over from the game? Naomi. Excellent deduction. I can see why my sister thinks so highly of you. Akagi said while grinning. These clothes are my set from the game, made by the finest imperial tailors in the capital. They cost me quite a bit of money in FWO, but they were worth every coin. I knew it. Those clothes look like some of the antiques my family keeps in our collection. I knew there was no way you bought them from some modern shop. The quality is far too good for that. Naomi exclaimed. Oni-chan, does that also mean you gotta keep all your skills and abilities too? Kana asked pensively. Akagi simply chuckled and proceeded to slowly disappear before their eyes. Her form burned away in black shadow before she finally vanished completely. A.N. See how Rikuo Nura disappears in Rise of the Yokai Clan? Oni-chan? Where did you go? Kana yelled, confused. She just disappeared right in front of us. Naomi. A few moments later, the girls heard a chilling laugh echo throughout the room before Akagi's form reappeared in the same manner in which it had vanished. How about that? Neat trick, huh? It's my personal favorite and one that I've gotten a lot of mileage out of over the years, Akagi said while taking another puff from her kiseru. That's amazing, you can turn completely invisible, Mika commented. Nope, I'm not actually turning invisible, Akagi corrected. That's the first assumption people usually make when they see this ability, but it's wrong. But it was clear that the girl didn't understand. At this point, the other players already know, so I don't mind sharing. What I'm doing is essentially overloading your brain's sensors with so much information that it blanks out the area where I am. Akagi continued. A person's mind can only handle so much sensory information before it goes haywire. I exploit this by overwhelming it so hard that it has two choices: crash or just pretend it doesn't see the info. And, well, it prefers not to crash. Not a bad comparison, except rather than your brain going offline for a bit, it just disregards the info packets. Akagi. Absolutely. Akagi confirmed with a serious expression. Chapter 7. Questions, answers, a homecoming, and a message from the hero. If I have all my abilities and items, you can bet that the other 99 players do too. Akagi. 99? Why such a specific number? Kana asked. Because that was the number of players who were awarded a final reward by the system. If you believe this final reward was returning to the real world as our characters, and I do, then the number of players like me should be 99. Akagi clarified. Isn't that dangerous? People are basically running around with game power in the real world? Mika asked. Very dangerous, Mika. Naomi replied harshly. Game powers are meant to be ridiculous and over the top. I shudder to think about what Akagi could do with just that one power alone, she said with a fierce look in her eye. She could go anywhere, steal anything, or even kill anyone. Naomi. This girl, why do I get the feeling she wants someone dead? She reminds me of a noble girl who contracted my services. Akagi. You're exactly right. If 100 superpowered people are running around the world with game powers, chaos is going to erupt. Akagi shrugged. It's only a matter of time until this information leaks. I can imagine governments are going to scramble to either recruit or eliminate us. Akagi. I won't let anyone hurt you, Kana exclaimed. Ha 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 ha. You don't need to worry about that, Kana. These idiots might try something, but they're no match for me. After all, delivering death is my specialty. Akagi said with a grin. So my information was accurate. She was an assassin in the game. This works out perfectly. She is exactly who I'm looking for. I'll have to speak to her alone at some point. If I'm lucky, she might just help me out. Naomi. The three girls spent the next 20 minutes asking Akagi all sorts of questions about FWO, her abilities, and other players. Oh yeah, before we forget, didn't you want to ask Akagi about your brother Mika? Kana. Ah, you're right, we got so caught up asking about her powers that I forgot to ask. Mika. Your brother? Was he an FWO? Akagi asked. Yes, his name was Kai Yumanaka. He usually went by Silverwolf online, if that helps. Mika explained. He died about a year into the game, and my family and I would like to know at least how he died, she said with sadness in her eyes. Well, fuck, of course, he would have to be her brother. I know exactly who that is, but I'm gonna refrain from answering that for now. I'll have to pull Kana aside later and explain things to her. That's not gonna be a fun conversation. Akagi. The name is familiar to me, but I'm sorry I can't really give you an answer. Akagi. That's okay. It was a long shot. I'm sure once the other players are up and about, I might be able to ask them, she said, clearly still distraught. Thankfully, none of the other living players know how he died, so I have time to figure out how to break the bad news to her. The only problem is that most of the other players know just how fucked up he was. Why did that fucking sicko have to be the older brother of such a sweet girl? Akagi. All right, we should get moving. Mr. Nishizami is waiting for us, and it would be rude to waste his time. Plus, we are holding up this room from being used by other patients. Kana explained. Ah, you're right. I apologize, I seem to have gotten us a little off track. Naomi apologized. The four of them left the room and headed down to the main desk. The sight of Akagi in full traditional clothing surprised most of the staff and patients, but she ignored their looks. After checking out, they all proceeded to the parking area where their driver was waiting. Sorry, time got away from us and we got a little distracted talking to Akagi. Naomi. That's all right, my lady. It's my job after all, and I don't mind waiting for you. I suppose this young woman is Ms. Tomogawa's older sister. Driver. I am. Thank you very much for taking care of my sister. I appreciate it. Akagi said to the driver with a warm smile. Well then, Oni-chan, shall we head home? Kana said, smiling. Let's. Akagi. The drive home was uneventful. The girls refrained from asking more questions about Akagi's abilities, not wanting the driver to overhear them. It wasn't that Naomi didn't trust him. He was aware of her wish. Rather, it was a sign of respect toward Akagi. A little over 30 minutes later, they arrived in front of the Tomogawa household. It was nothing special and looked like every other house on the block, but it was home, as much as Akagi could call it that. Thank you for the ride, I appreciate it. Kana. No problem. And Akagi, thank you for exchanging contact info. Naomi. Yeah, we should hang out sometime. Mika. It's only natural. I have to ensure that Kana isn't a bad influence on her friends. She replied with the cheeky smile. Oni-chan. Kana. Haha, don't pout, I'm only teasing. Here, I'll pat you on the head, you always like that. Akagi. Kana turns beet red as her sister strokes her head, but she doesn't move to stop her. The car takes off, and Kana and Akagi are left alone in front of their house. Well, no sense standing outside. I hope you have the key because I sure don't. Akagi. Kana sighs. Oni-chan, sometimes you're just too much to handle. The two open up the front door to the house, and instantly Akagi was reminded of all the time she spent there. She had been away for nearly 4 years, but it didn't seem like much had changed. Suddenly, Kana spun around. I've been waiting to say this for 4 years. Kana started. Welcome home, Oni-chan, she said with a bright smile. I'm back, Kana, Akagi said as she brought her sister in for a hug. The two stayed like that for nearly a minute before the sound of Kana's stomach broke them apart. I guess that means we should have dinner, huh? Akagi. Yeah, Mom and Dad won't be home till later, so let me make something for us, Kana said, hiding her embarrassment. Do you want my help? I got quite good at cooking in FWO, Akagi asked. Nope. This is your first dinner home with me, and I want to make it special. Kana. Well then, I can't wait to see what you make. Akagi. Kana got right to work making dinner. To Akagi's surprise, the girl had improved her cooking ability while she was gone. This wasn't exactly surprising, since she likely had to cook most meals for herself without Akagi around. Around 30 minutes later, dinner was complete, and they sat down to eat. The food was pretty good for something made at home by a 16-year-old. Akagi had much better food while in FWO, but something about this homemade meal made her believe that there was nothing better. After they finished eating, Akagi asked Kana a question. So, Kana, do you mind if I expand upon an earlier topic? It might not be pleasant, but I'm probably going to need your input. Akagi asked cautiously. If you're saying it like that, I can't imagine it's something I would normally want to hear about, but you wouldn't bring this up if it wasn't important. Go ahead. Kana. Akagi took in a deep breath. I know how Mika's brother died. Akagi. After a few seconds, Kana replied, If you didn't answer her at the hospital, I can imagine it's not a pleasant story. Kana. No, it's not. Nothing about the situation is pleasant. Let me ask, how much did she care about her brother? Akagi. I'm not completely sure since only met her after he died. But from what she's told me and how she acts, probably quite a bit. Kana. Well, fuck. Akagi cursed. You killed him, didn't you? Kana asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, I did. Akagi answered without flinching. I can see why you didn't tell her that. I don't imagine that would have gone well. If you don't mind me asking, why did you kill him? Was it a contract or? Kana asked. Oh, it was a contract, all right. A contract to kill one of the most fucked up players in all of FWO. Akagi. Kana gulped. Did he really do something that horrible? Akagi looked at her sister and said, Last warning, what I'm about to tell you is not exactly something a 16-year-old should hear. Akagi stared straight at Kana with a stern expression. Whatever it is, I can handle it, Kana replied. Her brother, Silverwolf, was the leader of the worst PK guild in FWO known as the Black Gauntlet. Kana could feel the contempt in Akagi's words. I'm not going to sit here and act like what I did was above board. I have plenty of blood on my hands. I'm an assassin and killing people is my job. Akagi. But those sick fucks. They didn't just kill for a living, they did it for fun. Their little operation kidnapped and killed over 50 players. They didn't care about loot or XP. No, all they wanted to do was get off to the power they held over people. They forced female players to let them have their way with them in exchange for sparing their friends' lives. Of course, they would just turn around and kill their friends and the girl once they were satisfied. Akagi's expression turned dark. That's insane. Why didn't the other players step in to stop it? Kana. I know what you're thinking, and they tried multiple times, but those bastards were slippery and they had the backing of some pretty important NPCs. Akagi stated. Eventually, it got so bad that I was called in to handle them. After all, it takes a player killer to beat one. Akagi. I staked them out for weeks, gathered as much intel as possible, and took them out one by one until only Silverwolf was left. Akagi growled. The contract required that I ensured that son of a bitch knew exactly who ordered him dead. I dueled him, and to be honest, he wasn't that difficult. By that point, I was already finished my build and was far above most other players in terms of level and skills. Akagi. He dared to compare us as if a psychopath like him was anything like me, Akagi said with a cold voice. Remember this, Kana. While it's true I enjoy the job, I do not enjoy nor condone mindless killing. I have rules and standards, that's what separates me from people like him. I kill because it's my job. People like him kill because they enjoy the act itself and the rush it gives them, Akagi said while staring intensely at Kana. That's a lot to take in. It's almost unbelievable, Kana replied weakly. But it's true, unfortunately. That's the kind of man her brother was. I don't know if it was the game that changed him, and honestly, it doesn't matter. Akagi. I can't even begin to imagine how to tell Mika this. She's gonna break if we tell her that her brother, whom she loved so much, was doing such awful things. Kana. Kana thought for a second. Not telling her at all might be the best option. Kana. Unfortunately, that's not gonna work. We could get away with not telling her that I killed him as there are only 3 people who know I did the deed. I won't say anything. I imagine you would keep quiet and my client sure as hell wouldn't admit it. But, Akagi continued, you're gonna be hard-pressed to keep every player's mouth shut about Silverwolf. It's only a matter of time until that information gets out, and when it does, she's gonna wonder why we didn't tell her. Kana finished. Exactly. Akagi. She's your friend, so I will leave that decision up to you. Also, if you want her to know that I ended him, that's fine too. Akagi. You would tell her that? Kana was surprised. I'm not shy about admitting who I've taken out. I kept quiet because of the circumstances, but if you're fine with whatever fallout occurs, then I won't hide it. Akagi. Kana was shaken by all this information. She had known Mika for 2 years and she truly valued their friendship. She knew that Mika wouldn't take this information well. She might not even believe it. More concerning was how she would react to learning that Akagi had been the one to kill him. Would she be angry? Happy that he was stopped? There was no way to tell. I need some time to think about this, but I think it would be best that we tell her ourselves before this goes public. As for whether you should tell her that you killed him yourself, I'm not sure. There are pros and cons to that. Kana was agonizing over this. What kind of older sister am I placing such a heavy decision on a 16-year-old? Sadly, it can't be helped. Mika isn't my friend, and I can't make this decision myself. Akagi. Well, just let me know what you need me to do. Whatever you decide, I'll support it. Akagi. Just then, Akagi's phone pinged with 2 messages. The first one was from Naomi asking if she could set up a time to meet with her privately at her family estate. The second one was an unexpected individual. Oh? It seems our little hero is out of the hospital as well. Whatever could she want to meet me for? Akagi said with a wide smile. Interlude 1, The Hero and the Assassin. Capital City, March 14th, 2056, approximately 8 p.m. Free World Online, FWO, Standard Time. It had been raining quite heavily for most of the day, and even now a light mist could be felt in the air. The streets were almost pitch black, with only the flickering streetlights to provide illumination. On this night, one lone figure walked down the main street of the lower city. Their face was obscured by a thick hood worn over their gear, and they were short, almost like a child. The figure headed into the back alleys, careful to avoid contact with the slum's residents or the few patrolling guards. After around 15 minutes, they arrived at their destination, the Lost and Found, a rundown tavern. The tavern was almost empty, with only a few NPCs present. The hooded figure walked up to and sat at the bar. What can I get you? Bartender. I would like an amber-eyed cider. A feminine voice replied. Good choice, we just got some in today. Would you like it mixed with anything else? Bartender. No thanks. Hooded girl. A few moments later, the bartender brought the girl a tall, cool glass of cider. After drinking it, she called the bartender over. The last time I was here, I think I might have forgotten an item. Can I check your Lost and Found? Hooded girl. Sure, come into the back with me. Bartender. The hooded girl followed him into a room behind the bar itself beyond 2 sets of doors. Go ahead and check downstairs. If what you're looking for is here, it would be down there. He points to the staircase. The girl replied with a nod. Descending the staircase, the girl entered the below-ground section of the tavern. It was slightly busier than up top, and the people here looked less like normal citizens and more like criminals. I can't believe a place like this exists in the capital. We're just a stone's throw from one of the Knights' barracks. Just how much money are they paying to keep this place quiet? Hooded girl. The girl pushed these thoughts to the back of her mind. She might not like it, but she was here on business and needed the help of one of these people. After a few minutes, she spotted the woman she had been looking for. Sitting at one of the back booths was a woman wearing traditional Japanese clothes and smoking from a kaseru. The hooded girl approached the woman and took a seat directly across from her. Well, you actually showed up. Akagi chuckled. I must admit, when you first contacted me about a meeting, I thought it might be a trap. I'm already aware that confronting you is a pointless endeavor. The last group that tried was wiped out, and I've better things to do than fight you. Hooded girl. Oh? The great hero. Hisha is letting evil go unpunished? What is the world coming to? Akagi laughed. Don't go saying my name aloud, idiot. No one, and I mean no one, can know I was here today. Hisha scolded. You don't have to worry about that. The moment you stepped into the booth, I activated its special feature, which completely obscured it from the outside. No one can see or hear what goes on inside, though we can see outside. Akagi winked. So you can go ahead and remove that hood. Sigh. Hisha removed her hood. Underneath was a girl who looked no older than 13 to 14 years old. Her hair was a light purple, while her eyes were candy apple red. Despite her small stature, she was wearing what looked like heavy plate armor underneath her cloak. It was clear that this girl was a frontline fighter and had the gear to back up such a role. Most people would think it crazy to send such a small girl into combat, but Hisha was no pushover. She had spent the past year progressing her abilities in FWO to the point that she was considered one of the best, if not the best player in the game. Akagi had encountered her quite a bit since they became trapped, and had even crossed blades with her on more than one occasion. There were even players who wanted Hisha to deal with Akagi to stop her from killing more players. However, Hisha always refused, not because she agreed with Akagi's actions, but rather because she saw Akagi as a rival that could help her improve. Her soft attitude on Akagi had caused friction with other members of the assault team, and some had even ventured out themselves to hunt her down. Of course, they always failed, and the assault team was forced to make do with less members. Eventually, after losing a not insignificant number of members, it became an unofficial policy to leave Akagi alone. To her credit, Akagi did try to limit the damage she did to the assault team since she didn't want to be blamed if they became unable to beat the world bosses. Akagi had known Hisha even before FWO. The two had battled each other across many games and had become fierce rivals wherever they met. But this time, their lives were at stake in this game. And while most found it terrifying, there were those like Hisha and Akagi that thrived in such an environment. You just really enjoy playing with me, don't you? Do all your clients have to put up with this level of harassment? Is it because I have a cute face? Do you just enjoy seeing it look mad? Like, who the hell set up that system to get down here? That's like some cheesy spy movie stuff. Hisha said, exasperated. Cheesy or not, it works and you can't deny that. And who might I ask chose such an appearance because it was quote-unquote fucking adorable? I take no responsibility for any teasing I may or may not do because of it, Akagi said with a smile. And to answer your question, it varies. Some clients come to me, sometimes I go to them. It depends. She says, taking a sip from her drink. Now then, shall we get down to business? Yes, well, it pains me to ask this. Hisha straightened up and looked Akagi in the eyes. Akagi, I need you to wipe out the Black Gauntlet. Chapter 8. A Skyline and a Meeting. Eh? Hisha wants to meet with you? Kana. Yeah, she says she'll be in Kyoto next month to do an interview and wants to stop in when she has some time. Akagi replied. Should I be concerned? Kana asked. No, not really. Hisha isn't stupid. I don't see her wanting to start anything, especially right now. Akagi continued. We might not be what you would call friends, but I would say we get along well enough. Though I sincerely doubt this is just a social call. Akagi. If you don't feel comfortable meeting her, that's fine. I'll figure something out. Akagi. No, that won't be necessary. If you say it will be fine, then I will trust your judgment. Besides, if I start avoiding her, I can imagine that might upset her. Kana. Akagi replied to Hisha's message, telling her to let her know when she arrived in Kyoto so they can figure out a time and place for the meeting. Now comes the issue of Naomi. Asking to meet with me alone makes it suspicious enough. She said her family's information network included the FWO players, which means she most likely knows I'm an assassin. If I consider that, plus her body language and choice of words at the hospital. That girl wants someone dead. Akagi. Oni-chan, you've got an evil grin on your face again. Kana knew this meant trouble. Don't worry about it. I just figured it's time to get back in business after my time off. Akagi replied. Just be careful. This isn't FWO. Kana replied warily. True, but whether it's FWO or the real world, the rules are always the same. Akagi gave a smile. I get a target and fulfill my contract. It's that simple. Anyone, client or otherwise, who tries to change these rules will find that they don't live particularly long. Akagi replied to Naomi, asking when and where she wanted to meet, and was surprised when the girl invited her to her family estate on Monday. Either this girl is confident in her ability to get away with this, or she's incredibly naive. Perhaps a mixture of both if she wants to talk to me. Akagi smiled internally. It's good to be back. Akagi. 3 days later. All right, Oni-chan, I'm heading off to school, Kana yelled from downstairs. Have a good day. I'll see you later, Akagi replied. Kana left the house, getting into her father's car before driving off to school. Well, Akagi said with a stretch, I guess I should get my day started too. First up, a meeting with a prospective client. I've never been to this part of Kyoto before, so hopefully I don't get too lost. Akagi. Akagi opened her bedroom window and jumped out onto the rooftop of a building across the street. She began hopping from house to house in the direction of the address, comforted in the knowledge that no one would be able to see her. Ah, I missed this. Running like this gives me such a sense of freedom, almost like I could go anywhere. She chuckled. Although I guess unlike an FWO, I can go anywhere I want. No boundaries, no edges of the world, nothing. If I felt like it, I could run straight to Tokyo, and there would be nothing stopping me. Akagi. Akagi reached downtown Kyoto and stopped on top of one of the high-rises. Kyoto still held a mixture of old and new, even this far into the 21st century. Traditional buildings and architecture could be seen right next to the most modern buildings. It made the skyline unique, something that you likely wouldn't see anywhere else in the world. What a view, Akagi said. The imperial capital was nice and all, but I think I prefer Kyoto. I feel like jumping on these rooftops will be much more entertaining at the very least, she said with a smile. The sound of countless cars could be heard below, and the Venturi effect provided a cool breeze on this hot summer day. It was nice, and it made Akagi unconsciously smile. I hope things stay like this. Calm, quiet, and without drama. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that once the other players start using their powers, there's gonna be chaos. Not to mention whoever the hell did all this in the first place. If they can bring these powers into the real world, what else can they do? Akagi. Akagi decided to push those thoughts aside for now, as there was little point in worrying about things she couldn't control. For now, all she wanted to do was speak with Naomi and hopefully get her first contract in the real world. Now then, if I'm not mistaken, she lives in the upper district, which is over there. Based on how fancy those houses look, I'd say that's a safe bet. Akagi jumped off the high-rise, allowing herself to free-fall for a few seconds, before propelling herself forward onto some other buildings. My lady, I know you are anxious about meeting Ms. Akagi, but I would ask that you stop your pacing. At this rate, you will wear a rut into the carpeting. Maid. Naomi was pacing back and forth in her private study. She had been increasingly nervous ever since Akagi had agreed to meet with her. Naomi couldn't be sure she would help her, or what would she want in return. After all, she was going to ask her to kill one of Japan's highest-ranking politicians. No one else had been willing to take the job because it was too risky. As the sole surviving member of the Tokugawa clan, she was its head, and it fell to her to avenge her parents' murders, even if that meant doing the unspeakable. I'm sorry, Marin. Naomi sat down in one of the chairs. I'm surprised you're so nervous. This isn't the first time you've spoken to someone from the dark side before, Marin questioned. You do recall that this specific person is a yokai, right? A being of mythical status and extraordinary power? Not to mention the records we've obtained on her from FWO paint a terrifying picture. I think I have every reason to be nervous, Naomi replied. The more I read about Akagi's time in FWO, the more I'm convinced that she is both the right person for the job and someone I should avoid at all costs. The Red Hand was the single most feared assassin in all of FWO, someone that even the hero Hishya avoided. When I met her, she seemed amicable enough, but I've been around enough people like her to know that it's foolish to assume anything. Naomi. A few minutes later, a knock came from the door and another maid appeared, snapping Naomi out of her thoughts. My lady, your guest has arrived. Shall I bring them here? Maid. Yes, please, and Marin, please prepare us something to drink. Naomi. I suspect this might be a long discussion. Naomi. A few minutes later, the maid returned, bringing Akagi with her. Ms. Akagi, my master is waiting in here. Please enter if you would. Maid. The maid then closed the door, leaving Naomi, Marin, and Akagi in the room. Here goes nothing. Naomi. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me so quickly. Please have a seat. I had Marin prepare some drinks for us. Naomi. Akagi sat down across from Naomi and drank some of the tea that was offered. This estate is beautiful. It reminds me of the villas that many of the imperial nobles owned in the capital, Akagi commented. It's strange, though. This all seems far too large for just one girl to live in, even with staff. Akagi took a sip of the tea. But I guess it makes sense with you being the last surviving member of your family. I am happy that my family home compares well to the nobles of FWO. I can only imagine how remarkable their manners were. Naomi replied. As for my family, it's not exactly a secret or anything. 6 years ago, my parents and grandparents were all killed in a burglary. Apparently, they wanted some of the items in our collection, but things turned deadly when my father resisted. I only survived because my mother hid me in one of the hidden rooms, Naomi said with sadness in her eyes. I've been alone since then. Well, not completely. Marin and the others have been a great help over the years, and Mika and Kana are the best friends I could have ever hoped for, she said with a small smile. It's truly a tragedy what happened to you and your family. I can't imagine what I would do if Kana were taken from me. A small shadow could be seen over Akagi's eyes. I must say I'm glad she made a friend like you. She was always a little bit lonely as a kid. All that brain power ended up making it hard for other kids to approach her. For the longest time, I was worried she would end up like me, Akagi said while taking a sip of her tea. She is truly a better friend than I deserve. Naomi smiled. But was it really a burglary, not a targeted attack? Nothing was reported stolen and there were no signs of forced entry. I got a hold of some police reports and it just didn't sit right with me. That story didn't make sense, Akagi questioned. It was also funny to me that the man who ended up getting charged committed suicide at the exact moment his cell cameras malfunctioned. Akagi took out and lit her kisaru. Seems more like a cover-up, if you ask me. Naomi started lightly sweating. Good. She researched into the incident enough to tell that things are fishy, but I need to be certain she's here as an assassin. There is always the chance she isn't, and I can't afford to make assumptions. There's too much at stake for me to get this wrong. I'll give her one more test just to be sure. Naomi. There have been multiple people who have said the same thing over the years, but I assure you that's nothing but a... Suddenly, Naomi was interrupted. Naomi, Akagi yelled. Yes, she replied with a yelp. I don't know what kind of a fool you take me for, but I know why I'm here. So cut the crap before you get on my nerves, Akagi growled. Hearing Akagi grow angry, Naomi's facade crumbled. I messed up. I got so caught up in questioning if she knew why she was here that I ended up treating her like a fool. Naomi. I'm so sorry. Naomi apologized. I wasn't attempting to make light of you. I just wasn't exactly sure how to approach this conversation. You're much different than others I've met over the years, and I couldn't be sure you still wanted to do things like this. I was so worried that if I asked for your help, you would call me crazy. Naomi continued. After all, you were an assassin in a game. Even if killing in that game killed people IRL, it was still a game. What kind of person asks someone who is only killed in VR to do that in the real world? So, I decided to test you and figure out your intentions. However, you saw through me immediately, which made it seem like I was insulting you. I am deeply sorry for that. Naomi stood and bowed her head in apology. I see. Well, I guess that's understandable. I'm unusual in this industry after all. Not every day someone makes the leap from VR to IRL assassin, so I'll forgive you. Just know this, whether it's in FWO or the real world, this is my calling, and I won't give it up no matter what. Do you understand? Akagi replied. Naomi nodded. So, tell me, Naomi, what do you want from me? Akagi. Naomi took a moment to compose herself before answering. I want you to wipe out the Mitsuhide family in its entirety. Chapter 9. A job worthy of the Red Hand. I want you to wipe out the Mitsuhide family in its entirety, Naomi said with absolute certainty in her words. You want me to wipe out the Mitsuhide family? Akagi asked. One of the most influential families in Japanese politics. A family that contains a former prime minister, the current defense minister, and the sitting speaker of the Diet? That's a tall order. Akagi. I know what I'm asking is crazy, but I have no choice. They are responsible for the deaths of my parents and grandparents. It was the Mitsuhide family that orchestrated everything 6 years ago. Naomi's expression went dark. During the attack, I saw Nagumo Mitsuhide. He came in after they had dealt with everyone else. My father was restrained by his goons, and he told him that the Tokugawa family should have just been content fading into history, that we should never have attempted to re-enter politics. Naomi continued. I don't know everything, but I think my father and grandfather's investments and political maneuvers posed a threat to his family's power. My father always used to tell me that our family's revival was at hand and we would soon be able to hold our heads high with pride. Naomi began to cry. But they killed them. For what? Because they couldn't stand the thought of losing any of their power. Naomi was practically screaming at this point. The only reason I'm still alive is because they don't think they need to kill me. To them, I'm just a powerless girl, the head of a broken family that dies with me. Naomi's face was flush from crying and shouting. I don't care about political power. I don't care about my family's honor or pride or even our history. I don't care what my ancestors did or who they were. None of that ever mattered to me, because more than anything else, we were a family and they took that from me. Naomi continued. I just want them to pay for killing Mom, Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa. They didn't deserve to die. They were good people. They were my family and I miss them every day. Naomi began to cry. In a flash, Akagi moved to Naomi's side and pulled her into an embrace. It's all right, Naomi. It's all right. Let it out. You've done well to hold on for so long by yourself. You're so strong, but for this moment, just let it all out. I'm here for you. Akagi comforted her. Hearing this, Naomi cried, harder than any time ever in her life. Even her personal maid Marine had never seen her lady cry this much before. It was as if 6 years of tears came out all at once. I never knew just how much pain you were in, Naomi. You always put on a brave face, and even though I knew you were hiding your sorrow, I never knew just how bad it was. I am so sorry that you felt that you needed to hide it all, even from me. Marin. I've known this girl for a grand total of 4 days, but this truly pisses me off. This poor girl had to deal with this much pain for 6 years with no one to confide in, not even her friends. Honestly, it makes what I went through look trivial by comparison. I wonder if I would have been like this without Kana by my side. Akagi. I wonder how much Kana knew about her situation. Probably more than she would let on, but there wasn't much she could do for her. She could only watch as her friend dove deeper into despair. I don't know how much longer this girl could keep going before she broke like I did, and I don't care to find out. Akagi. About 10 minutes later, Naomi calmed down and finished crying. Seeing that she was feeling better, Akagi let her go. Are you all right? You let it all out, didn't you? Akagi asked. Sniff. Yes, I'm all right. I feel much better. Better than I have in a long time, actually. Naomi made a small smile. Good. I wasn't really sure what to do, so I just kinda acted on impulse. Sorry about hugging you suddenly like that, Akagi said while scratching her cheek. No dot, no dot, no dot. That was really nice. In fact, when you did that, it reminded me of how my mother would do that when I was a kid. It took Naomi a few moments to register what she had said before she turned red from embarrassment. Akagi bust out laughing. I think I'm a little young to be your mother, but if it made you feel better, then I don't think I mind the comparison, Akagi said while laughing. Akagi's nonchalant attitude caused Naomi to join in the laughter. She really is kind, isn't she? I can see what Kana was saying about her. Despite that rough exterior, she can be a caring person when she needs to be, can't she? She really does remind me of my mom in that aspect. Someone who was warm to her family but tough on her opponents. It's still really embarrassing that I said that to her, though. Naomi. Once everyone had calmed down and Naomi had regained her composure. So what do you think about my request? It's too much, isn't it? The danger is too high, and I doubt I can pay you what such a job really requires. I will understand if you decline, Naomi asked. I accept your request, Akagi declared with a smirk. I thought so. It really is too much to ask someone to. Naomi's brain froze for a second. Wait, what did you just say? She asked. I said I accept your request. I will eliminate the Mitsuhide family so that you may avenge your family's death, Akagi replied while lighting her kiseru. Both Naomi and Marin were taken aback by this declaration. They honestly expected Akagi to decline. After all, by taking this job, she would be making an enemy of the Japanese government and would put her life in jeopardy. That was why every other assassin had declined in the past. You'll really do it? Naomi asked pensively. I just said I would now, didn't I? Akagi. But why? Doing this will make you an enemy of the state? You understand that your life will forever be in danger if you go through with this? Naomi couldn't understand Akagi's acceptance, even if she was happy. I mean, I am an assassin, aren't I? If I was afraid of a little government retaliation, I wouldn't be in this business now, would I? I mean, hell, I assassinated many nobles in FWO and even an imperial prince, Akagi declared. And before you go saying that's different, need I remind you that not only was death permanent, but the NPCs in that game were essentially sentient AI. That world was as real could be, Naomi. And when it came down to it, the Empire with all its resources, magic, and power couldn't do a damn thing to me, Akagi said with confidence. She's serious. She believes she can actually do it. No, she knows can do it. It's not even a question to her. Naomi. Then, I look forward to working with you, Akagi. What do we do now? Naomi asked, still shocked. Well, that's the fun part. Now we go over the actual contents of the contract. Akagi grinned. But first, I'll need my lovely assistant. If you wouldn't mind, Yumi, could you come out for a second? Akagi's shadow seemed to bend and twist for a brief moment before something leaped up and out into the center of the room. Of course, my lord, I am always happy to be of service to you. Standing just off to the side between Akagi and Naomi was a woman whose hair and eyes were a darker shade of green. Their color was almost the same as Akagi's, perhaps slightly lighter. She was dressed as what could only be described as a Miko, Shine Maiden, with a large bow in her hair of the same color. She looked to be the same age as Akagi or slightly younger, and her outfit was black and green like her master's. Allow me to introduce you. Naomi, this is Yumi, my second-in-command and most trusted assistant, Akagi said with a proud smile. Wait, don't tell me she's a... Naomi stuttered out. Yup, in FWO she was an NPC that I made into a follower. Using a little bit of game trickery, I was able to make her into an item that I could summon at will. Akagi continued. And since she was made into an item, she was brought into our world, Naomi exclaimed. That's incredible, she made an NPC, a piece of code come to life. Naomi. And the best part. Yumi here isn't just some NPC follower. She is a fully trained assassin and is a pro at gathering intelligence. Her help was invaluable on so many occasions. Akagi. Master, I appreciate your praise, but perhaps we should get to the matter at hand first. And then I would ask you to explain more about what's going on and where we are. Yumi. All right. You've been dormant until now, so you don't know. I'll explain details later, but for now, this is Naomi. She is a friend of my sister and has contracted me to assassinate the Mitsuhide family. Akagi explained. I see. Please allow me to take notes. Yumi took out a pen and paper and began writing information down. All right, Yumi. Have at it. Get all the info we need. Akagi. Of course. Now, Ms. Naomi, please answer these questions. Yumi. How many members of the family do you want killed? How do you want them killed? How quickly must they die? What form of payment will you be using for this contract? Do you have any special requests? And many more. Naomi was overwhelmed at first, but quickly got her footing. She explained that she wanted every member of the family killed, no matter how old or young. She even requested that members of the family who had married into different households be killed as well as their children. This girl really wants to go for a complete wipe. Not like I blame her. Akagi. The total number came out to 16 targets ranging from ages 8 to 87. She asked that they be killed as swiftly as possible, and that she didn't care how they were killed. Except, in the case of the family head, she wanted Akagi to inform him and him alone who sent her. As for the payment, going by my master's standard rates, the amount you will be required to pay will come to this much. Yumi showed the calculation in a small notebook. Naomi almost passed out when she saw the number. It was a number far larger than she could ever hope to pay. I'm sorry, there is no way I could obtain that much money. Even if I sold everything my family owns, it wouldn't be enough, Naomi said in anger. Yumi looked at her master. Well, there are always alternative forms of payment. I don't only take money. Akagi added with a grin. I doubt my family has anything that would be valuable enough to cover such a cost. I'm sorry. Naomi. Now that's not true. You have something that I want, and I think it would cover the cost, Akagi stated. Naomi was confused. She knew nothing that her family owned was really that valuable. I'll make you a deal. Your family owns a nice little estate outside Kyoto, if I'm not mistaken. From what I know, it's pretty worn down, but you've been maintaining it because it has historical significance as one of the shogun's old villas. Akagi continued. I want it. I also want you to assist me in converting the currency I obtained in FWO into something usable in this world. Chapter 10. A weight lifted and Marin's thoughts. Naomi let out a deep breath as she collapsed onto her couch. Akagi had left only minutes beforehand, and it was clear that her meeting with the assassin had taken everything out of her. My lady, are you all right? Marin asked, concerned. You look pale. Yes, I'm fine. I just feel strangely tired, as if my entire body has suddenly gone limp. Naomi shook her head. No, not tired. It was as if a weight was lifted off my shoulders and my entire body could truly relax for the first time in so long. Naomi. My lady, I'm sorry that I never understood just how much pain you were in. I always knew the death of your parents was hard on you, but I never understood just how much you were dealing with. You always put on such a brave face and a tough outer exterior that I thought you would be fine. I am a complete and utter failure as your assistant, Marin said with a regretful look on her face. It's not your fault, Marin. I went out of my way to hide it from you all these years, and I never even attempted to confide in you. I thought that if I showed my pain to you or anyone else, you would believe I was nothing more than a helpless little girl. It's not your fault that I was hiding it, Naomi replied. I would never think any less of you, my lady, and I can assure you that goes for everyone else too. Crying and feeling sadness are all natural things. We don't work for you because we believe you to be some unflinching girl with a heart of stone. We work for you because we believe in you, Marin continued. So please, you don't need to hold it in anymore, at least not around me. Thank you, Marin. I really can always count on you, can't I? Naomi replied with a laugh. I should have known that all this time, but I doubted you like a fool. The two exchanged warm smiles. Marin had been at Naomi's side since she was a child, and while she was a decade older, she had always seen herself as Naomi's friend first and foremost. That she had survived the events of that night was down to nothing more than luck as she was in Osaka visiting family. When she heard the news, she flew back to Kyoto in a blind panic, believing that Naomi had perished as well. She was overjoyed that Naomi was still alive, but she could tell that the events of that night haunted her. For months, Naomi would wake in the night screaming in terror, reliving the death of her family. Over time, Marin had watched her friend grow colder and more distant, and she began to feel that she might lose her forever. It was 6 months later that Naomi told her what really happened that night. Marin was shocked to hear that it wasn't a burglary gone wrong, but rather an orchestrated hit from Japan's most important political family. Such an assertion seemed outlandish, but Marin never doubted her words. From that day forth, Marin swore to do anything to help the young girl achieve closure. Over the next several years, she helped Naomi to rebuild what her family had left her. Luckily, her father had been preparing her to take over the family business since she was a young girl, so she wasn't completely out of her depth. Naomi expanded her family's business and worked towards building a stable power base that she could use in the future. Marin had assumed that Naomi merely wanted to continue her father and grandfather's legacy and prove herself to both them and the Mitsuhide family. However, that impression quickly proved to be wrong. Naomi used her family's connections and wealth to get in touch with the underworld. She involved herself in criminal dealings and more than one illegal trade. The things she was doing would not make her parents proud. Marin thought Naomi had gone crazy and tried to talk her out of such a path, fearing for her friend's safety. When confronted, Naomi told her that she didn't care about the family business, her legacy, or what her parents would think about her. No, she was only interested in one thing: revenge. She told Marin that she wanted the entire Mitsuhide family to pay for what they did to her, and that she would achieve this goal by any means necessary. Naturally, hearing a 13-year-old tell her that she wanted to commit murder set off alarm bells in her head. At first, she thought about reporting this, but the question was, where? She couldn't go to the police. She didn't want Naomi to be arrested, and she had no one who she trusted enough to confide in. She was also afraid of what Naomi would do if she learned that her trust in her was betrayed. In the end, she chose to do nothing, and decided that she would help Naomi as much as she could, while trying to keep her from going completely off the deep end. When Naomi returned from school on Friday, she told Marin that she had finally found the one who could fulfill her dream. She began to describe a girl called Akagi and her exploits during her time in FWO. Marin had thought that Naomi had finally lost it, as no matter how realistic FWO was, it was a game, not reality. However, when Naomi told her that Akagi had kept all her power and abilities from the game, she became concerned. Not about whether this person existed or whether they had these abilities. No, her concern stemmed from what might happen to Naomi if she achieved her goal. What would she do next? Would she truly be able to live with her decision? All these questions and more flooded her mind as Naomi told her about this girl, Akagi. When the day finally came and Akagi arrived, Marin could instantly feel that the woman was dangerous, so much so that she dared not to speak. It was clear that this woman was a professional, easily on par with the others who had come before. However, what Marin could not understand was how a supposedly normal 17-year-old girl could turn into something so frightening in less than 4 years. Naomi had told her before the meeting that she intended to feel out Akagi and test her to see if she was here with the mindset of an assassin. However, it became apparent immediately to Marin that such tests would be seen as an insult to this person. She wanted to interject, but found herself frozen in fear when Akagi locked eyes with her. At that moment, it felt like she was being stared at by a predator rather than a person. She was shocked to see Akagi embrace Naomi, and even more so when Naomi allowed herself to cry in her arms. She had never been that intimate with anyone since her mother died, and this made Marin feel like a failure as a friend. Unexpectedly, Akagi agreed to Naomi's request, much to Marin's surprise. When the girl called Yumi explained how much it would cost, she feared what Akagi would ask of her master in return. However, when she told her that she wanted a family property and assistance converting her currency, Marin felt a great deal of relief. Marin! Suddenly, Naomi's voice brought Marin out of her thoughts. Yes, Marin yelped. I've been calling out to you for a while. What on earth were you thinking about so hard? You had a strange look on your face, Naomi asked. Marin flushed red with embarrassment. My apologies. I was thinking about everything that has happened. It's been a lot to process, she said with a slight stutter. Might I ask you something? Go ahead, Naomi replied. What will you do afterward? I'm scared that once you lose your purpose, you'll... Marin couldn't finish her sentence. Naomi took a moment to think before responding. I honestly don't know. I didn't think I would get this far. I've lived my life since that day in pursuit of revenge. Honestly, I didn't really care what happened to me afterwards, so I didn't plan for the future. I suppose I will try to continue my family legacy as much as I can out of respect. If nothing else, I will dedicate my life to paying back Akagi for this debt. Naomi explained. I have a few ideas that might work. At the very least, I'm sure Akagi will get good use out of my connections, and having a house back her will undoubtedly be useful, even if it is just me. Hell, I would even marry her if she wanted, though I can't imagine she would go for that. Naomi. Whatever the future held for Naomi, one thing was certain: it would certainly involve Akagi.